Welcome back. If you've been watching these videos for a while, you know how much I enjoy my coffee. A couple of years ago, I got this promotional thing from Starbucks saying you had X amount of points this year, which to me just translated into how much money I was spending at Starbucks. So I decided to go out and buy myself a Breville cappuccino machine, making my own lattes and whatnot at home. I would go find local roasters and try different coffees, and I always got these nice fresh ones. They'd last about 2 weeks for 12 ounces of coffee or so, and then I would go buy more, so it was always very fresh. I'd always wanted to get into roasting, but listen, that's art. That's some science and art there, and I just figured I'm gonna butcher up a whole lot of it. So I started looking at and exploring roasters some time ago, and I looked at everything from the hot air poppers that are just $350, $400, and it sort of works like an old popcorn machine, right? The coffee turns in it, and it does small quantities at a time. And then I started seeing people were modifying these so they could connect it to this artisan roasting software on the computer. And I started thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll buy one of those units and I'll get the, all the fidgets, the thermometer, temperature sensors, the Bluetooth connectors, all this stuff. And the next thing you know, that $350 unit gets up to $700, $800 when you add on all these things, and you have something that's, Frankenstein together. So I started looking for a small unit I could start with. And I went ahead and found this Kaleido. It's called an M2 Dual, meaning it comes with its own tablet and roasting software built right into it. And it also connects Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to the network, so you can connect it to Artisan software, which is just a roast profile tracking tool. It lets you control the roaster as well as record notes about the coffee, smells, how you roasted it, the weight you had, the amount you lost after you roasted it and took the moisture out of it. So it lets you track a bunch of this stuff. Now, I'm not going to get into a ton of detail on this because honestly, I am a novice. I am still just learning. I've been roasting now for, I don't know, with this one, 3-4 weeks, and I'm starting to get the hang of it, and enough so that this happens to be a light roasted Colombian coffee that I roasted myself. When you buy green coffee, it'll last about 18 months. I'll say 12 to 18 months, it starts maybe losing some of its flavor, but I will go through that in 4 months. The nice thing is, these units are, I don't know, let's say $2,500 to $100 to $2,800. And I found somebody selling this one used. They weren't going to be using it anymore, and I got it for about half that price. I paid about $1,400 for it, for the unit, for the tablet that comes with it, and for a few little accessories, including a whole bunch of coffee he gave me, though it was dated, and as I roasted it, I was having a real hard time making good coffee. I was frankly burning and scorching a lot of it. When I went and got new fresh beans, made all the difference in the world. So I'm gonna just walk through a quick roast today. What I'll do is I'm gonna load this thing up. I'll start by just turning on the heating element and getting that going. So we've got the heating element going, and anytime I turn on the heater, I turn on the drum inside of it so it's rotating. I don't want it to seize up or anything. So that's starting to warm up. When I start this roast, I'm gonna do it with 200 grams of coffee, and I'm doing small batches. This is not a whole lot. And green coffee, as it says, is a light green color. And as you roast it, it goes from a green color to its drying phase, which turns it yellow. And then it begins to work its temperature up until it gets to something they call first crack. And first crack is when it actually cracks the outer shell and the moisture escapes from the bean. And this goes into the development cycle. This is when you really start developing your flavor, your roast flavor. Now, I prefer a lighter roast coffee, so I will go midway up first crack. I don't want to get to second crack, which happens at a higher temperature. As soon as it gets to that stage, we're going to do what we call dropping the coffee, which is releasing it out of the drum and into this bin, and we'll immediately begin turning on exhaust fans to cool the coffee in here so that it doesn't over roast. When we pull it out at medium, we want it to stay at medium, or if we pull it out at blonde, we want it to stay at blonde, and it will have residual heat, so it's real important that we stop that roasting. All right, with that, I think I'm going to record my screen. I'll leave it up here on the display as we go through this process. I'll stand just to the side of the roaster because I'm going to want to look at it and check it out. One of the cool things I like about this roaster is right on the front we have this little trier. You can pull it out, look at samples of your coffee. There's no way I'm going to put that in there without looking. But you put this right back in there. We put our coffee right up top like this. We put our 200 grams of coffee right up here. So we're still waiting for this to get up to temperature. We're gonna wait, probably about 20 minutes. Honestly, it's up to temperature at about 10, but I want the entire drum to get hot as well. I want there to be good residual heat in there when we drop the beans in. This is gonna be a live video. I will turn the camera back on when I'm about to drop these beans, and we will go right on through the roast. Now I went ahead and set my environment temperature right now. I have it set to 385 degrees. You can see it up in the upper left, and I got the burner up almost all the way. Right now, my environment temperature is around 326, 328 degrees, and the bean temperature, the drum where the beans will go in, is sitting at about 385. So I think we're pretty good right here. I am gonna go ahead and click on start, and this is where the machine's gonna begin to track everything. And you'll start noticing on the left two different graphs. One is the environment temperature, and the other is the actual bean temperature. So what I'm gonna do here is I am going to click on this charge button while I open this up. So while I open this here, I'll hit charge, and that's gonna start my timer. I'm just using a little poker here to get all the green beans down in there, and I'm gonna close it right back up because I want that temperature to stay good and hot in there. So that's closed. You can probably hear the drum spinning. And if you look on the screen, you can see that bean temperature dropping, and that's because we put the cold beans into that environment and it's hitting that probe and dropping. But I'm gonna kick up my environment temperature. I want this to be able to go up to 420 degrees. Now, if you notice on the screen, you'll see this red line dropping. Again, we're looking for that turning point. We're getting close. You see how that line's starting to come back up here? That is gonna mark turning point, and the roaster will automatically mark it in the Artisan software as soon as that happens. And it just did. You can see that it just did that at 222.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's gonna start coming back up. So now we're in the drying phase. Now we're taking those beans and we're going from that green bean to a yellowish color. Now I'm gonna speed up the drum here. I want that drum to go a bit faster. I'm gonna turn just a little bit of exhaust air on here. It's gonna get hot standing back here in a moment. But now what we did is I just went 5% with the air, and we're pulling a little bit of the air out of here. As we get closer to first crack, we're gonna crank that air up so we extract out any of the outer shells that come onto this and get them off of there. Now you'll notice this line here that shoots straight up and starts to come down. That's our rate of rise. We want that rate of rise to kind of come down at a bit of a slow angle. I would like to finish my drying phase in about 4 minutes. And if we look at my red line, it's projected to be right at about 4 minutes. It'll get up to this 300 degrees here. So I think we're at a pretty good pace with the burner. We're gonna leave it just where it is. Now I'm looking at the Artisan software, and that's what I'll display on the screen, but everything is also graphing right on this little display as well. It graphs almost all the same thing that Artisan does. It's just, for me, it's a little easier to control this by just grabbing sliders and moving them instead of hitting the plus or minus buttons on the control itself. So I think my rate of, my bean temperature rise is doing just kind of what I want to see it do, so that's good. We're getting pretty close to this drying phase ending. I'm going to crank it up just a little tiny bit more on the burner, maybe another 5%. We'll do 25% on the burner. I bumped it up to 30 because I see my rate of rise dropping pretty quickly, and I'm going to want that to come back up a bit. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the drying phase, and I should start to see these beans should start looking a little bit more yellow versus green, and they're starting to. I will say I don't see great color in here across these, so we'll check it a couple of times. I love the fact that you got this little trier and you can check the beans right there. Just put it in, turn it upside down, that drops them back in. Point the arrow back up, and I'm now collecting a new set of them. They're still a little bit green. We want them to get a bit more yellow. So we're right at about 4.5 minutes, and we've now gone up into this drying phase. We're sort of in that, beyond the drying phase, into this Maillard phase. We're starting to develop some flavor here. I noticed my temperature is dropping pretty low. I want to keep that up around 300 to 325 degrees if I can. And as we get closer to first crack, I'm going to jump up the air here to about 50 or 55%. You can really hear it and feel it back here. That's why I'm standing to the side. So the first crack of the bean happens somewhere around 385 to 390 degrees. And as I'm looking at this, it's going to take us probably about 9 to 10 minutes to get there. So I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit. I'm looking at that from these projected bars. So I'm just going to crank up the heat a little bit more to 55. And what we want to do is raise that heat a little faster so that we get to that first crack at about 8 minutes. All right, drying is definitely done. We're starting to get a little bit of color on these. You can see it there. I think I'm going to increase my air vent out just to get a little bit more exhaust coming off of it. And I'm going to bump up the heat just a little bit to compensate for that. And I'd like to see first crack somewhere in the 8 to 9 minutes. This should be overall about a 10 and a half to 11 minute roast. So I'm watching these dotted lines that kind of go up to the right on this graph here, and I'm seeing that they're kind of finishing somewhere in the 9 to 10 range. You can see I cranked up that heat, so we're starting to see that rate of rise going back up. And our bean temperature is kind of steadily climbing here as well, which is what we want. We're going to drop it when it's just about 400 to 404 degrees. Now I've got a pretty good projection, probably at about 8.5 minutes to hit 390 degrees. Just go to my trier here, we'll take another look. All right, starting to get just a light roast on it, not quite blonde yet, but getting there. Now I'm gonna start dropping my burner just a little bit here. And I'm doing that just because I don't want this to scorch too quick. I want it to slow down that rate of rise. Did you hear that? That was the first crack. I'm gonna go ahead and mark first crack start. And you wanna wait until you hear several of them. That one was like a single pop. Now I'm gonna drop my my burner down a bit here because I want to develop that flavor very slowly, and I'm going to crank up my air and get my drum going nice and fast too. You hear that? Hear that cracking? Sounds a little bit like popcorn. So my beans are right now at about 380 degrees or so. They're looking pretty good. We're going to let this roast a little longer. We are 9 minutes and 5 seconds in, and it is smelling phenomenal. Let's check these out. Looking pretty good. Yeah, it's got a nice crack right down the center of the bean. Now you'll notice this red line, which is my bean temperature. It dropped and has climbed up. It's going steadily up. And right about now in the development phase, it's kind of hanging neutral at about 385 degrees. That's what we want. We don't want these to get too dark. We want to develop a little bit of that flavor. Just like grilling, it's that Maillard phase, like on a steak. These are looking pretty good. Not quite there, but close. I think we're within a minute here. I think I'm going to call it. So I'm going to click here on my drop and turn this and open it. Now you heard that exhaust fan kick on. That's because it's cooling these beans. Now I'm just going to come to the side here and keep moving these around so these exhaust fans pull all of that chaff right off of them. You just want to rotate these around for about 2 minutes or so. Okay, before I end this here and turn off these fans, I'm going to go ahead and stop this particular roast. As soon as I hit off, I'll have an opportunity to save this, and we'll see our actual roast. I'll put this as a link down below. You'll be able to see that rate of rise and where we brought our bean temperature to. This to me is exactly what I want to see, and I'll show you the before and after on the beans. So if we were to take a look here, what we have are some amazing roasted beans. This is probably somewhere between a blonde and a medium, maybe a light city roast. But this is exactly what we want to see. Nice wide crack on the bottom side. A little bit of these cat's paws near the top part of the bean. You start to see that crack goes up and little fractures on the side. So there we go. So we now have, let's see what we have. We put exactly 200 grams in here. Let's zero out our scale and we'll weigh our beans. We have 174 grams, so we lost 26 grams of moisture out of these beans. That's exactly what we want to see. That's probably about 13% or so. And you kind of want to see 11 to 15%, at least with these beans. Now, here's the challenge. Every bean roasts different amounts of time, takes different temperatures, takes a different length of time. That's the reason this artisan software is so good. You can track it, and if you keep a good record of it, next time I buy these Colombian beans at this elevation, I can kind of follow a similar pattern. Now the nice thing about this machine is I can actually go into artisan software, load a previous roast, and auto run it. And basically it can either follow the same temperatures and make its adjustments on its own to have that bean and environment temperature the same, or it can follow all the adjustments I made. So if I manually change the burner from 55% to 20%, it will do it at the exact same time. Really kind of handy to do, though I've been enjoying manually doing this. I want to make sure that I'm paying attention the whole time and learning from it. And as I make these adjustments, I want to see if I adjust 10% up on the burner, how high does the temperature go over 1, 2, or 3 minutes? And it's sort of a bit of a trial and error. And I shouldn't say it's not guessing, but it's learning the outcomes of our actions and what actually happens. This now needs to gas. I like letting these gas for 3 to 5 days, and after 3 to 5 days, I have been grinding and roasting and enjoying my coffee. So I know this one's a little different, not a grilling video, but we are cooking. We're just cooking coffee beans. We'll see you next time. Happy roasting.